Hello there, welcome to Genessis Models and welcome to the July 2020 Q&A. So in this Q&A we've got a nice couple of questions which I'm just going to go over and answer them for you. So first up we have Frank J. Frank J is, he's from upstate New York, and his question is, my question has to do with airbrush cleaning. For a quick colour change, I have been using full strength Windex in the cup and then rinsing with distilled water. What is your opinion on using this method? Is it quite expensive, readily available, and no mixing required? What he's basically saying is, is Windex good and whatnot? In all honesty, I do use the homebrew airbrush cleaner. And really what's in this is we have the homebrew thinners, and then basically I just add ammonia to it, which if you kind of look at Windex and the ingredients in it, it has ammonia in it. When I did do the homebrew airbrush cleaner, I did actually try out using Windex, and Windex was quite nice, but I did kind of find that maybe it wasn't as strong as I'd like it to be, so I went down the route of just adding ammonia to the homebrew thinners, which does seem to work better. The ammonia sort of helps clean it quite nicely, but really it is kind of sort of personal preference, really. At the end of the day, it all depends. Do you want to be spending a load of money? Because in all honesty, you whack something like cellulose thinners or maybe the Mr. Hobby self-leveling thinners in there, you're going to just clean out absolutely anything and everything. Really breaks down paint really well. As for a quick color change, you know what, Windex, it's nice, cheap, readily available. The homebrew airbrush cleaner, easy to make, really cheap, getting a bit of ammonia, brushes, cleans out your airbrush nicely during a color change. I mean, really, even normal thinners can just blast it through, because really when you do a quick color change, the paint's generally sort of quite wet in there still, so you're only really sort of flushing it out. You want to use the heavy stuff when it comes to like doing a strip down and clean it and stuff, but nice quick color change, Windex, absolutely fine. Pretty much anything that you're sort of comfortable with or comfortable with buying. I do like the Vallejo airbrush cleaner. I do find that's a good one if you don't mind spending a little bit of money. Absolutely fine using that. So hopefully that answers your question. Then we have Chopper Nutter. Chopper Nutter says, I've seen you scratch build various details before, details for models before, but have you ever built something completely from scratch or done any kit bashing? Is it something you'd like to do at some point, and what are your thoughts on the whole scratch and bash model making scene? When it comes to scratch building, do you know what, it's nice to do a bit of scratch building, because let's face it, you do some scratch building, you're sort of enhancing your model, you are kind of really making a custom model, like nobody else has done something like that, because you are scratch building, it's totally custom made to you, unless you go off and make molds for it and sell it or something. But scratch building is cool. Again, it's one of these areas I haven't quite covered enough, shall we say, and I've got room to be making tutorials on, or step-by-steps on, so it is something that's on the list of things that I want to do. I want to be doing dioramas at some point. Scratch building would be cool as well. Personally, I think I'd probably do like a nice little basic tutorial, just an introduction to scratch building first, where we just sort of cover some basics of scratch building. Doing a fully blown step-by-step, that's probably going to be a big one, because admittedly when it comes to scratch building, me personally, it's probably not my favorite subject. I mean, I do like it, but I mean, it's not my favorite, but it is time consuming, right? I mean, when you build something completely from scratch, it can take you an awful lot of time to actually build whatever you're building, especially going off and doing a big scratch and bash. So yeah, it's definitely something that's on the cards and something for the future. So hopefully you'll look forward to maybe seeing something like that down the line. We then have, who's this? This is Gary York 100. He's basically asking a question: if all paints were magically solvent free, i.e. no smells at all, what type of paints would you use? I think basically what he's trying to say is, I think he likes solvent based paints, but the big sort of reason why people go with acrylics, as you can see in the background here, is, you know, they don't have the smells or the potency, and it's all bad for your health. It is why people go down that route. I mean, really, ideally, if paints were magical, you know what, you want a paint that is going to spray out the airbrush really nicely. You're going to want a paint that's going to go down on the model really nice and smooth, stick really nice, not something that's going to peel up or get orange peel, you know, just a real nice smooth professional finish. Something that's going to dry really quickly, so we can crack on and carry on spraying and haven't got to worry about, you know, debris in the air falling on the model and then sticking to the paint. You know, it dries really quickly, and to obviously be smell free, to not have all this solvent smell that, you know, really smells, and it's bad for your health and everything. Sadly, really there isn't one like that, but really when you kind of look at it, you know what, acrylics do kind of come sort of close. You know, they can spray down really nicely, they do spray out the airbrush really nicely. I mean, acrylics, you can spray it down in a couple of minutes, it can be dry, touch dry at least, and you can crack on. And because they're water based, I mean, really they can be a bit smelly, but I mean, it's better for your health than going off and say using enamels and solvents. Admittedly, acrylics, they do have that, so we say they're not as durable or as hard as, say, enamels and solvents, so there is that bit of a downside to it. But I mean, really, it's one of them. I mean, you know, we're getting new paint ranges all the time, they're improving them and everything. I'll probably think that actually, you know, we will get to that perfect paint at some point, and it probably will be acrylic at some point in the future. But really, solvents and enamels, I think they're probably best just kept to the whole cars and, you know, that kind of things, motorbikes, to get those nice high gloss finishes. But really, when it comes to tanks and aircraft, really, acrylics is probably the best way you want to go. Even if they were sort of smell free, I think acrylics are still good. So if that isn't the answer I was looking for, but you know, it's just my opinion that I've found with acrylics over the time. But he has got some more questions. He's actually basically asking about the shelf rack that I've got in the back here, and any sort of advice, because he's thinking about actually building one, and I've got any things to sort of maybe stop him having any problems down the line. First off, this is just a crappy bit of woodwork. I mean, you might be seeing it on camera and it looks nice, but if you look up close, you know, I mean, I'm not bad at woodwork, but I'm not the best. But really, when it comes down to it, really, I found that it was planning. Planning is probably the key if you want to make your own nice little bit of a wooden shelf for all your paints. Just plan it out, right? You need to sort of get your pots of paints and know what paints you've got, know the range of paints as well. So here we have, for example, Vallejo, you know, basically simply going off and measuring the pots, you know, their width, their height, so you know the space between the shelves, what height you need. Also knowing by measuring sort of the width of it, how many pots of paints can you fit on a shelf. So then how many shelves do you need to fit, say, the whole paint range, and maybe having a couple of spare for any new ones they bring out. It's all a lot of planning, in all honesty. And I did like to have like a nice bigger shelf at the bottom here, just to stick any sort of odds and sods on there. But that's probably the best advice I could sort of give you. Sort of get some nice big screws, you know, sort of nice thick wood, nothing sort of too flimsy, and just plan it all out, measure it all out, sort of get your numbers right, just so as you can fit all the paints that you want on there, as well as any future paints that you might come up with. And then all I did, in all honesty, was I just put some of that skirting board paint on there. I found a grey version and just painted it grey, just to make it look a little bit pretty, and just a sort of a wood effect going on. So hopefully that answers your questions. We then come to Jeff. Jeff is just wondering if anyone knows, does microsole and set go off with age? I have had mine for some time now, several years, and the last couple of times I've used it, the decals have been a bit difficult to settle. Could the decals be but I was just wondering if the decal solutions go stale. Do you know what, I've had the same sort of problem, in all honesty. I have had a bottle of microsole, and I've had it for a couple of years, little bit left in the bottom, and I'm trying to get these decals to go down. It's not kind of going down normally. Got out a fresh new pot of microsole, and straight away it was working the way I remembered it. So in all honesty, yeah, it does look like that microsole and set does seem to go off. Whether it's because they're going stale, or whether it's because maybe something's evaporating out the pot, something that is needed in the solution to actually make it work so good. Whatever the reason is, yeah, do you know what, I think they do go off over time, or they evaporate off over time, and they kind of lose their potency. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it probably is a good idea that after so long you actually just kind of throw away your microsole and just get a fresh one, sadly to say. But that goes for a lot of things, in all honesty. I know acrylics, there's some acrylics on here that I've had for like 10 years or more, and really you could probably add maybe a little bit of thinners and they're all good again, but they do stay quite nice and fresh. I do find though, enamels, right, I mean AK, ammo, right, any of these kind of like enamel based type paints, I do find that they do sediment to the bottom, and when they sediment to the bottom, they do start to go hard, and basically the pigments go hard, and they do sort of become almost unusable, or a really thinned down version of what they once was. So when it comes to enamels, you know what, it's a good idea to at least once a year, yeah, you might have a lot of paints, give them a good shake, at least, you know, as often as you can really, but you know, I try once a year just to give them a good shake, make sure you mix all the sediment off the bottom, and just stop them from drying up, because if they just sit there and you haven't used them for several years, they can go off. I think, I'm just guessing here, 5 years is probably like the max if you don't like use them or don't mix them up or something like that, but they do tend to have a bit of a shelf life. So there's all the questions for this month's Q&A. As always, if you could get over to Genesis Models Forum, we have a nice little monthly Q&A section there, and just post in any questions that you want and I'll get them ready for next month. But if anyone's emailing, commenting on YouTube, on the forum, and I see a good question, I'll normally just throw it in my little list here and do it for next month. As always, middle of the month, so I'll probably see you again the middle of August for our next Q&A. So until next time, my name's Bob Waldron, this is Genesis Models, and I hope you've enjoyed.